Week 8 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few defense DST sleepers I have this week. The first one, the New York Giants. So the Giants defense, the last 2 weeks, they've been really playing good football, holding the Bills to 14 points, this defense, and going out there and making plays. Week 6 of Buffalo, 14 points allowed. In that one, an interception, a fumble recovery. In Week 7, a great ball game versus Sam Howell and the Washington Commanders. 7 points allowed, 6 sacks, an into, and a block kick. So this week here, another good matchup in the battle in New York versus the Jets. I give up the 10th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So Zach Wilson, we know he hasn't found the end zone. But one thing Zach Wilson has done, he hasn't turned the football over as well. But I think it's going to be a pedestrian type of ball game for both offenses, where it's a grinded out field goal type of game between both teams. So right now, after 2 solid performances for this New York Giant DST, they're available still in 95% of fantasy leagues, and definitely a sleeper option this week. The next DST is the Houston Texans. So this Texan defense, it's starting to build momentum and play good football over the last few weeks. And now to get a little bit healthier coming off the bye week and a great matchup at the Carolina Panthers. I give up the 8th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. Right now, I think the Texans can help fantasy owners. Available in 93% of fantasy leagues. In the last few weeks here for them, Week 4 versus Pittsburgh, 6 points allowed, 3 sacks and interception. Week 5 at Atlanta, 21 points allowed, 2 fumble recoveries. And Week 6 versus the Saints, a pretty solid offense, 13 points allowed, 2 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery. So right now they're holding down opponents for the most part, mid-teens to low 20s since Week 3 is this Houston Texan defense. And like I said, they could get to the quarterback. They play pretty sound defense. And this week versus Bryce Young and a pretty bad offense with the 0-6 Panthers, I like them as a sleeper option this week. In the third and final defense DST I have as a sleeper this week here is the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans this week, we know they're at home, and they play way better at home than they do on the road. And a good matchup versus the Falcons. I give up the 7th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So the last few weeks, I know this defense really hasn't done much, is Tennessee. Week 5 in Indianapolis, 23 points allowed, a sack. And Week 6 versus Baltimore, 24 points allowed, a sack, an into, and a block kick. But this week here versus Desmond Ridder and an offense that has trouble putting points on the board for the most part, even though you got to give this Falcon team credit in winning ball games this season, 4-3 on the year. But this Titan team, home game, coming off the bye week, I think they could get things going, and they're available in 98% of fantasy leagues. So that's a few defense DST units I have as sleepers here for Week 8 of the fantasy football season.